Back here on the Northland Sports Page Prime Time Edition, 7 to 9 tonight. Makes that a multi-purpose bump-in song because, yes, we started at 7. And when it comes to girls basketball in our area, our teams are out of Section 7. And our next guest knows about Section 7 at just about every level.
Every level, every gender. I mean, this guy's a basketball junkie, and we love him for that.
I'm glad you said that because my play-by-play and public address season in the winter ended today. And at some point, I'll do the math as to how many games did I cover over basically 2.5, 3 months' time. And I don't think I have a pretty good number, but as we bring in CJ Osuchukwu, girls basketball coach at Duluth Marshall, Mr. CJ Osuchukwu, I have to ask you this. How much basketball estimated do you see in the winter? Because you're coaching at Marshall. I see you at the East Gym. I know you've been in the Denfeld Gym. I see you at the Rife Gymnasium for St. Scholastica. How much hoop do you take in? And good evening, my friend.
Yeah, I've taken a lot of basketball, boys and girls. Yeah, it's a lot.
I was going to say, give me an estimate. Do you figure in a winter season you see 100 games, 200 games? Factor out the summer league stuff. Just in season for college and high school basketball, give me a ballpark. How many games do you think you've taken in?
Yeah, it's probably close to 100 probably. Yeah.
That's a fair share of hoop without a doubt, and we've got very good quality basketball teams. Again, in Section 7, you can pick the class. In 7-3A, Rock Ridge, who you played this year at Duluth East in the breakdown tournament, they're headed to the state tournament. 7AA, the section that you coach in, Crosby Ironton is simply that good. MIB, when I saw the score down to 7A, I joked. I said, how does it feel when you win your section final by 40? But MIB, the beat goes on, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just, you just expect that year in and year out from them. So,
hey, Coach, one of the things that we complain all the time when we're watching hockey is, Hermantown's killing all these teams they should play at AA. Is the same kind of conversation true in basketball? When you see a 40-point win in the championship of section, don't you say you guys are in the wrong level?
And I was going to say that, too. I want to piggyback off that because, CJ, I look at your team, and it's a struggle to get out of 7AA because Pequot's good, Crosby's good, you guys are good. Proctor's good. You could go down further, Mesabi East, etc. But all of those lower class in terms of enrollment teams could destroy some bigger schools, but you don't hear that conversation, is I think what Dave is saying, like you do on the ice.
Yeah, so I mean, to first answer your question about hockey, so I'm not a hockey person, but I hear everybody complain about Hermantown a lot. My thing is they're not doing anything against the rules, right? Whatever their class is, and it's not now if they were winning the state tournament year in and year out, I would say, hey, you probably should try to bump up a level just to kind of test you, right? But today, they lost, so are they really that much better than everybody in their class? I don't know. I think up here we get too caught up in winners and not, instead of trying to figure out how to win and be elite, how these other teams are elite, we get caught up on how to kind of throw salt or negativity towards them. I give Hermantown big props to, I don't know the coach. If the coach walked by me today, I wouldn't know who it was. I don't know the kids on the team. They could walk by me, I wouldn't know who it was, but I respect winners. I respect greatness. So, I mean, they're doing it at a high level. So, I mean, I think only thing we can do is respect that. But I did see a tweet. It was funny. I saw it, and it was I don't know if it's real, but it said after the loss, Hermantown requested Minnesota High School League to add another class. And I don't know if that's true or not.
It's not. There's a lot of parody accounts out there. It's not. I saw it too.
Yeah, I started laughing about that. But that to answer your question about that, I just think we shouldn't hate on greatness, and I think people should try to match that level. And to answer your next question about the MIB piece, it's the same thing. I mean, last year was their first year winning a state tournament, and 15 times that they went and they didn't win. So really, are they that elite, or teams just need to get better? So,
Or is it also
like
the difference
Absolutely
between
fair.
the two sports where depth is a bigger factor in hockey because you've got, 3 lines of defensemen, 3 lines of forwards playing, where I think we all know that basketball, you get 1 or 2 stars and they can change a game? Because I just picture kind of like what we're talking about. You're in a very tough Section 7 2A. If somebody asked you guys, hey, you've been dominating 7 2A, move up to 3A, I picture you giggling going, sure, because we beat all of them. It's just different, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I would prefer to be in
That's what I'm saying.
single A, 3A, or 4A. Like I would prefer to be in any of those sections outside of our section. Some people don't really want to hear this, but we have the hardest 2A section in the whole entire state. If you look at our QRF, you got about 6 teams in the top 20, and no other section has that. So yeah, it is a tough section. But I mean, we've won it twice. We've almost won it 3 times. So I think you just got to match whoever is the top dog at that point in time.
We're talking with CJ Osuchukwu, the head coach of girls basketball at Duluth Marshall. Duluth Marshall bowing out in the section semis earlier this week. CJ, what we're talking about with the differences in enrollment and the differences in talent, the way that those are echoed in hockey differs completely from the way it's discussed in basketball. What in your mind is the explanation for that? Because you're right. You can talk about Section 7 AA, but you can talk about the 2A class in general. And, you got teams like Providence Academy and Albany lurking down there. And it seems to me that some of the best basketball is at the smaller schools. Is it just rural communities value basketball more? Because I know Diami Starks, who's a good friend of yours, has said, hey, financially it doesn't cost as much to get a basketball career started as it does to play hockey, because smaller communities and dominant basketball, hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, you get these smaller communities that are like a Crosby Ironton, right? They have about 3,000 people in their community that they're going to back their community, right? Like you go to games and you see Crosby's whole city there.
Right.
So like as a little kid, why wouldn't you want to play for that? Same thing with MIB. You go to MIB games, you go to their home games, their gym is packed. Where if you go to Duluth East, you go to a 4A school, boys or girls, there's only one side of the gym that's not even packed, right? So it is different in a sense with smaller towns, but I also think with private schools it's a lot different too in Minnesota, where it's open enrollment, right? So you can have a kid live an hour and a half away from you if their parents are willing to drive you to school to go there to play whatever sport that you're going to play in and get that education. It's I want to say it's easier to be elite, but you look at Providence. I mean, I doubt those kids live next to Providence Academy. So it's different. Same thing with Minnehaha. Same thing with us. So it is a lot different. So yeah.
I want to talk about your section a little bit more because your season ended at the hands of Crosby Ironton earlier in the week. I'm going to give you a very simple question in terms of it's not going to be very long-winded, and I know for me that's different, but how good is Tori Orline? I saw her once, and it was in that breakdown tournament, and I think she had almost 40 that day. I mean, she's that impressive to me, but you see her more than I do. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Tori is elite. Tori is a special talent. I knew she was special in middle school. We never got to play her, but we almost played her in a section final game Gianna's senior year when she single-handedly almost beat a really good ESCO team that year. And so, yeah, I mean, Tori's a workhorse, and she's different in a sense where she doesn't like, you watch her, she doesn't do anything flashy, right? It's not like she ain't shaking you, she ain't shooting. Don't get me wrong, she can shoot it, but she's not shooting 50-foot, 20-footer threes, 25-foot threes, step-back threes. Like, she's just physically going to destroy you the whole entire game. Like, and for girls, that's tough because the game is not that physical. So when you have a physical girl, you look she was kind of I didn't get to watch Rebecca Dolman, but I got to see high school video of Rebecca Dolman.
Bram was ridiculous time and time again, no doubt.
She reminds me of Rebecca Dolman.
So CJ, the eyes of women basketball are on Target Center right now, and Miss Clark from Iowa, and the attention of the nation is really kind of turned towards women's basketball, frankly. And I'm wondering, there's going to be more eyes, I think, on this week's women's basketball, girls basketball tournament in the cities than I'll bet there's ever been. Who are a few people that fans who may not have followed it closely but have Caitlin Clark fever and want to watch some girls basketball? Who are some of the people they should look at this weekend?
Please say Jordan Zubich and go ahead.
So, and you said just for the state tournament for girls basketball?
Yep.
Well, first, I mean, my favorite high school basketball player the last 3 years has been Liv Miguel. I think she's the best girl in the state. She plays for Hopkins. She's a dog. She's going to Florida next year. She's going to be playing in the All-American, McDonald All-American game. She's top. I think she's like 12th ESPN in the country. Okay. She's just a dog. Now, I love her game just because she plays the game how people play it back home. So, like, that just – it gives me, like, a home feeling watching her play. And then Olivia Olson, she's really good, too. She's going to Michigan next year. She's top 15 in the country, ESPN. She's another girl that's going to be playing the McDonald All-American game. She plays at Benil St. Margaret. Obviously, Jordan, I mean, me and the Zubages are like family. So, Jordan's going to North Carolina. I don't know if there's a better catch-and-shoot girl in the whole entire country outside of her. She has NBA range. She plays for MIB. I'm trying to think. Tori, obviously. Maddie Greenway from Providence. Alyssa, I like Alyssa Sands. She's going to play at St. Thomas next year. She plays at Albany. I could name I could keep it going. There's a handful of girls that people should get out and watch during that state tournament.
So, Brian, this is what you and I were talking about earlier, is that we need women's basketball players to become ours. So right now we can tell you 5 or 6 different players, high school players, and where they're going to play college, and that they'll always be Minnesotans, right? And so this is why I asked CJ the question, because, guys, we've got girl basketball players, high school basketball players who are going to play for North Carolina, Florida, are going to be in the WNBA. Start following them and wrap your arms around them now, because they are ours.
Another thing we were talking about earlier, CJ, and this kind of fits you too, is we talked about if somebody was moving from out of state to Minnesota, how do you explain to them what each of the major sports is like here? And we kind of made light of it because we kept it mostly to pro sports. And we said, well, we got to teach them how to be miserable because that's all we know here in Minnesota. And I know you've mocked Minnesota sports. You've joined in the fun. I have fun with you talking about it when we text a lot too. But I want to make it common to this segment. When you moved here, when did you realize, hey, I'm in a relatively rural area of northeastern Minnesota, but you just listed a litany of talent at girls basketball. I think some of the credit goes to the work that you and Diami do with these kids. But when you got here, when did you look at it and say, dang, Minnesota is a girls basketball hotbed, or did you know it before you got here?
No, I mean, I didn't know really anything with girls basketball pertaining Minnesota until probably after my first year of coaching high school basketball, just because now that I was in it, I wanted to, like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, right? So that's when I really started to really follow it, watching G and Grace play on a national level, watching them play other high-level kids night in and night out. And that was the Paige Becker era. So, like, it was, Grace got to play with Paige Becker. So, like, it was easy to follow and watch and learn quick that Minnesota, I mean, arguably we have some of the best basketball top to bottom in the whole country, top to bottom, right? So, like, the lowest girl going D1 could be a high-level player in a different state. So it is a blessing, and it is fun to watch.
I understand that completely, and that's part of why, Dave, when I said I understand why this is the state of hockey, and I get it, and I'm part of it, I'm born and raised here, but I cringe when I hear it too, because I still think of, when you say that, you're dismissing other sports that this state has a lot of talent in. Speaking of a lot of talent, I know your team season is over, CJ, but I want to talk about them a little bit, and I think we have to start with the two stars. I saw the all-conference selections on social media today. Chloe Johnson on the first team, Regan Juneman on the second team. They are kind of the barometers of where your team was going. You've got two of the best. You want to talk about D1 players? Eventually, those two probably fit that category too.
Yeah, I mean they're hardworking kids, on and off the court. And yeah, they're special. I mean they're elite. I think just kind of the next step for them that I personally would like to see, and I think just in general is just in big games, just learning how to close out big games and win in big games. I think that was something Grace and G learned after kind of like their first year playing, my first year being with them after we lost to Proctor in that section final game. I'm never going to forget it. Like, they both looked at me at the end and said, we won't lose games like this ever again. And it was funny to hear that, because we did lose a couple of close games and things like that, but when it came down to it, they willed us, and they had everybody else follow their lead to get us to that spot. So it'll be interesting to see how they pan out for the future.
You talked about kids telling you'll never lose games like that again. When you have returners coming back, obviously they can say that. Seniors can't do the same thing. Can we talk briefly about Ada Scafty? Because I know I've joked with you before that, man, it feels like she was at Marshall for 15 years because she got so much playing time for you.
Michigan State Center.
Right. That, she was the super senior before there were super seniors, and there aren't super seniors in high school, but it just feels like she was a staple on your roster for a long time. And I heard this at the college basketball level about Megan Hurley this year at St. Scholastica, that she was kind of designated the team mom. I felt like Ada Scafty was that for you the little bit I saw your team. Am I way off when I say that?
No, I wouldn't say you're like way off. Ada is a sweet soul that's kind of like a old soul in a young person's body. She's a great kid. I can't wait to see what she does at St. Kate's, and Don. I think her and Don are going to hit it off tremendously. Definitely going to miss her. Definitely expressed that to her after our last game. And yeah, it felt like she was there forever.
I would agree with that. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. I want to talk about somebody who will still be there for several years to come, we believe, but a lot is known about her already, and I don't want to overdo what Chip Scoggins has done, what local news has done, but Chloe Johnson is such a great player already. She isn't technically of high school age yet, and then we know the story behind the mental health, etc. How much maturity in your mind has she shown both on and off the court? Because that, to me, is the eye-opening piece.
Yeah, I mean, it's been different just because, I don't know what it's like to have OCD at all. I don't think a lot of people don't, and for her to do what she does on the court and take in what people say and don't say, and getting offers and not getting offers, and going and playing. Her AAU team is projected to be the best team in the whole entire country, and playing with that pressure for just being a kid is kind of amazing. A lot of 14-year-olds. I don't think any 14-year-old knows what they're going to do the next hour, let alone the next year or the next couple of days.
Hey man, some 44-year-olds don't know the answer to that question either. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's true too. So it's dope to kind of see her fight through that and figure those things out day by day.
CJ, we're going to cut you loose, but I want to thank you for doing this on your Saturday night. I know it's different to take that kind of time when we have a different time slot. I love talking to you. You know that. I think you know I have a one-liner for everything. We talk publicly, and it's fun. We talk privately, and sometimes it's even more fun. I love you, man. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, man. Love you guys, too. Appreciate you for having me on.
Talk to you soon,
Absolutely.
man.
That is Duluth Marshall girls basketball coach CJ Osuchukwu. Good luck finding somebody who knows a little bit more about the sport of basketball in our state and maybe throughout the nation.
Well, and how about somebody who's just willing to talk about it and share it? And, there's a lot of smart people out there. There's not a lot of smart people out there who are willing to take you under their wing and show you what they see and how they see it. I love that part about it.
I will tell you this. We're bumping out with the Beastie Boys' Sure Shot. You want to watch a team that has some sure shooters? Catch the Hilltoppers next year. Stick around. We'll be right back. That's a great theme song just for me. Maybe not for Dave Cook. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. We are the Northland Sports Page. Thank you to CJ Osuchukwu. He joined us a while back. Thank you to John Carlson basically for this whole week as he joined us back in hour number 1. That song is called I Wish. The first line is one of my favorites. Almost all of them ring true for me. I do have a girl, so I could call her. My wife, closed circuit to her. I'll be home soon for the first time since Friday morning. But it starts with, I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish both of those things. But the reason I used I wish is because you may notice that somebody's missing from the show, and that's not very common on Saturdays. That's Dave Hoops.
Yeah, Dave has a historical trip to the state
He has a
tournament.
tradition to live up to.
Yes,
he's watching hockey right now.
He is, and we're not going to act, infringe on something that is a tradition. So we're just going to go along, and we'll catch Dave next week.
Absolutely, but one of our best traditions is partly Dave Hoops because he's part of our great sponsors.
100%. And let's start. You know what, Brian? Let's start with one we have a little bit extra to talk about. Let's start with the Blackwoods Group. They have locations on London Road in Proctor, in Two Harbors, Blackwater right downtown, Tavern on the Hill, where I tend to spend paychecks, right? Taking people out to dinner, whatever. But they have a big thing coming up here. What do they got?
They do have an Easter Sunday family dinner available. It serves 6. The cost is $165. It includes the baked ham, the rum raisin glaze that comes with that, mashed potatoes and gravy. I'm not sure what cheesy spätzle is, but I'm intrigued by it.
Right?
And it's got green beans. There's a dessert. There's all kinds of different things. Again, $165. It serves 6. Easter Sunday is the final day of March this year, so believe it or not, it's somewhat around the corner already. And, of course, for the orders, you've got to get them in by March 22nd. And you can do that, again, by contacting Jessica at Blackwoods. You can do that via the phone, 218-625-6147. Or it seems real simple just to do the email, easter@blackwoods.com.
You know what's crazy, Brian, is when you have a family coming in or friends and family are celebrating Easter, so much time, and Dana's talked to me about how frustrating it is. You spend so much time in the kitchen that you miss the opportunity to visit and catch up, right? You do some of that in the kitchen, but as a group. Blackwoods for, a couple of bucks, and $160 is a lot of money, I get that. But that's $160 worth of time that you're actually spending with your friends and family. And so I think that's probably a pretty good deal. That's something to really consider if you want to spend time.
I was going to say, as if I needed one more reason to utilize the Blackwoods Group, because they've got all those locations, and you can find me usually at one per week.
Well, let's move along to Comfort Systems, Kohler Hyundai and Kohler Toyota, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, OAR Holdings, Arola Architecture Studio, and Hoops Brewing.
Absolutely. So this segment, we're going to do kind of a what would Dave Hoops say or what would Dave Hoops do? And maybe we don't know those answers, but what we know is what Dave Cook normally does in the segments with Dave Hoops, and that's ask kind of miscellaneous, life-altering questions. So because with the state tournament earlier today, we're calling audibles in terms of our time slot, in terms of our content, in terms of our order, we're not going to completely call an audible here. We're just going to do those questions, you and me.
That's right.
So it's kind of the reverse of buy or sell, where the pressure's on you to come up with answers and me to come up with questions. The proverbial script flips for this segment.
It does. And close circuit to everybody who's listening. So I guess that's broadcasting and not local casting, whatever the opposite of broadcasting is. A lot of these questions have come right out of the last 24 or 36 hours.
I was going to say, I have seen Dave now just about every hour of my life for almost 36 straight.
Yep.
And as far as I know, we're still getting along. Go ahead.
Yep. All right. So the first question, and CJ, we kind of got to it a little bit.
By the way, can I just say, privately, CJ and I have a lot of laughs. I love talking sports with him. He's a fountain of knowledge.
And again, people that know, like they have inside knowledge, right? And if they're willing to sit down and share it with you to teach you to see the game better or help broaden your, and there's hockey, Pat Andrews does things like that. Steve Patosha's done that for me. I mean, those people are special. Make sure you're always in communication and thanking them.
And you know what's refreshing, whether it's in sports or not? Somebody will tell it like it is. And I feel like CJ is that way too.
Fact. So let's go to these questions
because
I think you'll do it too.
All right.
So Hermantown, Warroad, Cathedral, Matamidi, Orono were all in the state tournament last year as well. Double A, I believe it was, so it's Edina and Rapids or Andover was there the year before, but half
Double A was different this year, but they've got their blue bloods too.
Right. Okay. So does it make more sense to add a level? So maybe there's a single A, double A, and triple A, and the triple A is the big boys, or the single A is the small one. Or, Brian, does it make more sense to go back to one? Because it'll be the same. Right now, it'll be the same 12 teams. In over a 3-year period, you'd have 15 teams. Which do you think it is better, to expand it to make sure that some of the middling teams get a shot at a state tournament, or to actually shrink it down so the tournament is more powerful?
Can I answer the question to start with the question?
Of course.
Because my question to follow up on that would be, what's your goal? To silence the noise or for the good of the sport?
Yeah,
because I think they're different.
Yeah, and I guess I think it would be for the good of the sport first, but I think the Minnesota State High School League would think of the good of the fans.
Because I think they're different. Because I think for the good of the sport, go back to one. Because it was tradition, it was fun, it was interesting. People call it the last grade 8 for a reason. For the good of the fans, I've said this, it's not a soapbox that I'm on. It's not a hill that I'll die on or sword or whatever cliche you want to use. I do think it's a little bit smarter to add a third class if you really want to silence people. Because here's the thing. In the case of Hermantown, I'm now of the belief that people that just lose their minds that this team won't go to Double A end up sounding incredibly silly. I also think the people, though, that rush to the defense of Hermantown end up sounding incredibly silly. Now, closed circuit to those folks, you're still right, because their argument is, well, the rules say when your enrollment is this, you can play here. You're absolutely right. However, it is a little bit like the minor league baseball player that completely dominates, continues to get the call to a major league team, and hangs up the phone. So that part I don't love. But I think the only thing that people are sick of is seeing this team win and their favorite team doesn't. So if the goal is to get more people involved in the state tournament, more teams, you have to go the route of basketball, who has 4, and football that has 6. Now, the risk you run is a third class would almost become all Metro.
Yep.
But if you look at this year's tournament and previous year's tournaments at Double A, if it's not Rapids or East and Moorhead or Roseau, everything else is Metro anyway.
Correct. That's 100% of my point. The second thing that I wanted to make a point of is you're going to wreck the tournament weekend if you go to 3, because now how are you going to...
I was going to say, you're going to have extra days or extra venues, and who's going to be on TV and who's not.
And for the people that are saying that that's not fair to a team like Hermantown, in the past decade, Hermantown have been the best team in Section 7.
Right.
Regardless
of A or Double A.
Half the time. Right, so it wouldn't have impacted Hermantown's run to the state tournament all that much.
But I think I have said this now for 3 straight shows. Again, Hermantown is completely within the rules, and I'm not upset with them for being a single A team. I used to be. Yep. I think I was in my 20s, but I am not somebody who's upset by it anymore. And the argument in Hermantown's defense has been their enrollment is 600 and some. They shouldn't play Duluth East at 1,500, Wayzata, Lakeville North, what have you.
Yep.
I completely agree with you. But I'm a Duluth East guy. Their enrollment is 1,500. I get it. They also shouldn't play Champlin Park, Wayzata, Mounds View, whose enrollment is double them. So you solve that. You have an A that would have very, very small schools. You have a double A that would have slightly larger schools. And you have a triple A. But of course, me saying that as a Duluth East guy, you might have Duluth East stuck as the smallest school in the biggest class.
Yeah, the other thing is, it's tough to say we shouldn't have to compete with those guys, then you schedule them all year long. That's one of the things.
That's the other beef.
Coaches from all over the state I've talked to, that's their only beef.
Yeah, I was going to say, what would it do to the sport? Because I think it would damage it, but other people say, well, it's kind of regulating things. If it said, okay, you can play in this class, but you only can schedule your class.
Yeah, that would hurt a lot of development.
I think it would too.
All right, let's get off that one. Ready? Okay, so we had dinner and food at a hotel.
Sort of.
Yes, well, no, we paid for it.
Oh, yes, we did.
So here's my question. How much is too much for A, a good beer, and how much is too much for B, your average run-of-the-mill, I could buy it at the grocery store beer at a restaurant?
Well, we said we weren't going to talk politics again, but in this day and age of inflation, the answer's everywhere. But I guess that's part of it too. You have to know where you are, because I'm pumped to go back to Target Field in less than a month for the Twins home opener. And I know I'm going to have a libation, and I'm going to do John Carlson, and I'm going to have my hot dog, which we didn't get a chance to talk to him about. Yes, I'm going to channel my inner John Carlson and have a hot dog, and I'm going to overpay for it. I completely understand that. So it's hard to answer, because part of it is knowing where you are. And, Econ 101, again, shout out to Mrs. Jablonski from my senior year at East, supply and demand and at what cost, because too many times you're not paying for what you're consuming. You're paying for where you're consuming it. I mean, I love the X. They treated us like gold, but how many $7 Cokes did we buy to get through the broadcast?
Yeah, I bought everybody today because I hadn't spent any money yet. And yeah, it was $36 for 3 Cokes and a hot dog.
So I'm going to defer this question to Dave Hoop's next appearance, because your question is, how much is too much for a good beer? I don't know the answer, because I know Hoops Brewing has great beer and Dave doesn't let me pay for them.
All right, we'll go there. All right, so the last thing. This is my last question. And you and I had this conversation last night, and we talked to John, and we talked to Nick about it yesterday before. What is the most important thing for a great motel to have?
Wow.
Yep, because we saw some things that we really liked, and some things we were like, what in the world is this going on? So
that is such a good question, honestly. I know you love when people say that to you, but that is such a good question.
Obviously, you got to have a bed, right? And you can't have
a good one.
You can't have bugs. All right, so let's just take those things out. Hotels that have beds and no bugs, those are all good. So we've cut the ends off of this. So what makes a good hotel?
All right, I'm going to start with something that'll shock you none, because I'm going to tell you a little bit about my wife and my marriage when it comes to hotel stays. We are the exact opposite when it comes to one of us is snooty faluti and the other one is my wife, because I am the one usually with expectations through the roof, and she's the one that says, like you said, I don't want bed bugs and I don't want to die.
Yeah.
So her expectations are pretty low. Where mine is, I even said it a couple points down in the cities this weekend. I can't believe we didn't have this. I can't believe we didn't have this. I can't believe we didn't have this. Well, believe it, Brian, you're asking for a little bit much. Depends on my mood, because in some ways with hotels, I'm going to be 45, as I've said for the third time on this show, before the end of this month. When it comes to hotels, sometimes I'm 45 going on 12, because I love to swim. I love to soak in a hot tub. Nobody my age who I hang out with says those same things when they're going into a hotel. They don't care if there's a pool or a hot tub. I do. My wife could care less.
It's funny because, Brian, since you and I have started to go to hotels for games, I have quit carrying the extra bag that was the super king size wraparound sheet. So if it did have bugs, I never had to look, because I'd wrap every single bed that I stayed in a great big sheet like that. But I know you're only going to the good ones.
Right. So for me, I guess those are necessities that I enjoy. But at the same time, it's not always necessary. I get it that I'm not 12. Just sometimes I act that way. The other thing, too, is our hotel had a shuttle to the airport. We weren't going to the airport. I would like, and I don't even know if this is necessarily a thing, I would like a hotel that just has a shuttle service, almost like their own Uber. Like every hotel will tell you these are locations in the city that are close proximity to us. And that's nice. That's a good way to plan your trip. But I think a nice perk would be, and we'll take you there.
Yeah, no, I get that, because you're willing to pay extra for the valet. Like the guy who was a valet last night at that hotel, he made a couple of bucks as I sat there and waited for my pizza. He made more than a couple bucks, and it would be nice to have a service like that as well. People would make money doing it.
And I always like, and I'm sure the workers don't, but I like hotel restaurants and bars that are open late, because especially in like airport connected hotels like we were at, you got late flights coming in, and maybe they're exhausted. Maybe they want to go straight to bed, but maybe they don't. So when things are closed at 10:05, that can be upsetting sometimes. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, at 8:45, I may not see 10:05 tonight, but different story this evening.
So one of the things that I think needs to be added on there, and this is more of a tip of the hat to the employees, they got to be staffed better. Like the poor group that we worked with last night, they had airplanes coming in on a regular basis, and it was 3 people. They had 4 tills. There were 3 people behind, and one of them is trying to fix problems. Everything could get escalated to that one person. The other 2 are just trying to grind people into their rooms, and it was like, one more. This is not this isn't the Super 8, right? This is a really nice hotel, price-wise, and you should have enough staff to take care of your folks.
All right, so I've got one question to spit back at you that we might have some fun with. What is your biggest pet peeve that if you really step back and think about it, it's so stupid that you have it as a pet peeve? Because I hope Topher Davis is listening because he should know exactly where I'm going to go.
I don't think I have any pet peeves, do I?
No, because just generally everything gets on your nerves.
No, I think that well, okay. Yes, there's a pet peeve of mine.
I guess to put it in like a social media term, what's your biggest first world problem where you go, really, I'm complaining about this?
I expect things that say they're going to do something to do them. And I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about stuff. Like if I have a print button that doesn't work, like I only want you to do one thing,
right?
Just one thing. And I'm yelling at the keyboard and people around me are like, oh God, something's going wrong with Dave's computer again. So yes, my pet peeve are machinery of some kind or another that doesn't do what it's like set to do.
And mine is scheduling, because there's something with the postseason at the state high school league level that I don't understand. Because whether it's section playoffs or the state tournament, in any sport, I'm going to pick on hockey because we just got done with it, but they put games 2 hours apart. Games that take 2 hours and have warm-ups and or resurfacing, and nothing comes close. So from the radio standpoint, when you're trying to explain to a sales team or a traffic department that, yes, I know everything you've seen says 1 o'clock, but there's a game in front of us. We're going to start at 2. Now today, because there's an award ceremony after each game, they put a buffer of an extra 30 minutes and things work out fine. Why can't we put that 30 minutes in there the whole time?
You know, on that, I do have a pet peeve, and you just brought it to mind. My pet peeve is that people that live within the 494, 694 belt think that everything outside of that belt is the woods. You know, what did I have somebody tell me once, that the woods go from Rogers all the way to Grand Rapids, and then after that it's just be a dark line that says monsters live here. That bugs me because I get that. Oh, you're from Duluth. Is it safe up there? Because there's a lot of animals.
Wow.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
That's a perspective I'd never heard before. Tell you what, we're complaining, but more tongue in cheek and doing it for fun because we just got back from a wonderful set of days of the state tournament. We're pretty blessed when it comes right down to it. Of course, we wish Dave Hoops could have been here. But again, that's wishful thinking. He's doing his thing watching the AA final. We've got one segment to go here on the Northland Sports page. Stick around. We'll be right back. A little Jimmy Buffett with Come Monday. And if you tuned in last week, we had PA on the show, and he introduced us to Monday, where the NFL's legal tampering for oxymorons goes into effect. So for drawing lines, courtesy of Roll Architecture Studio, in our last 7 minutes or so here, we already talked about we think Kirk Cousins' tenure as a Viking is over. So we're going to pose kind of a two-part question. What would you do at quarterback? And in conjunction with it, what would you do with pick number 11?
Oh, those questions.
Yeah, too bad I did that last, right?
Well, this is a fun conversation.
Teaser for next week.
Well, what would I do at quarterback to start with? Again, the Vikings can't pay. If Kirk Cousins wants to be paid like a starting NFL quarterback who has got all these years and all these numbers and the money he deserves, they can't do it. They just can't.
Right. I think Kirk is out of the picture. Let's, for this scenario, say he is. Where are you going? Because you've hit me with a lot of questions recently. You know, if Daniel Jones is healthy, would you? And I said, bleep, no.
Mm-hmm. I read something the other day, and it makes sense to me. And that's if there's a guy like Sam Darnold, it doesn't have to be him.
No ghosts here in Minnesota.
But he'll see him. If there's that guy there that you want to take a swing at, who's now a journey person, right? He's just a journeyman. It's what he's going to do. I think you need to backfill then with one of two players. And some people are going to wince. It's not the Wilson you think. It's Zach Wilson. But wouldn't you try to get Russ at the dollar store? I would not.
I know his personality doesn't fit, but if you can get him for pennies on the dollar,
I wouldn't.
And use the saved money to throw it at Daniil, JJ, and fix other spots, can't you do it and then draft your future at 11?
I just don't think. You know how I think about football, and that's you have to get the best guys who can play in your system.
I don't want Russ for the record, but financially it just seems to make the most sense.
He can't play in KOC. He's more Josh Dobbs than he is Kirk Cousins.
But if he's just a bridge, how much playing are you asking him to do?
Then let's go find somebody cheaper, and let's go find Sam Darnold.
But how are you going to find somebody cheaper when Denver's paying him $1 bazillion to play for somebody else? The only quarterback situation worse than ours is Denver's.
The minimum that he can make is 1.2, right? I don't think he's taking 1.2 from anybody. I think
unless he waits and Patrick Mahomes gets hurt and he gets to inherit the Chiefs, then maybe he would.
I think so. I think that a guy like Darnold is kind of a bridge guy just to make sure there's a professional quarterback. Now, the Vikings have been guilty about having Kirk Cousins and no other professional quarterbacks, right?
Right.
So you'd bring him in.
But we thought that was Nookie Blanky, so Kirk didn't look over his shoulder.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
But then I'd backfill with one of two guys. And it's either Zach Wilson, who has a ton of talent just put him in New York and make him start the first day coming from Brigham Young, you've asked him to fail. And I still might take, and I know that I shouldn't, but I still might see if the Cowboys would trade a 7th for Trey Lance and put them behind Darnold and just say, boys, don't even think about it. You're
so there's
just
no
learning.
scenario where if you get one of the bigger QB names at 11, you just throw him in. I think we're all on the McCarthy bandwagon, whether we should be or not, I don't know.
I would move if I could get that combination of young kid that still has a shot and a quarterback. I think that I would say, I wish I could trust Kwesi more than I do.
Right.
Then I would,
well, that's what the entire fan base is saying.
Stand on the box and say 11 needs to become 21 in a second.
We've got 3 minutes to go. Any shot, because you mentioned the trust of Kwesi, and I think we don't trust him because of some draft day trades he's made, particularly within the division. Any shot that they talk to the Bears about Mr. Fields?
Yes, there's a shot. I don't know. The thing I heard, and it makes the most sense to me, is this is his upcoming year, is his last year on his rookie deal. So the team that makes a trade for him has got one of two things going to happen. Either he's going to be the guy that they thought he was going to be, and they're going to have to pay him for the following year, or he's not going to be the guy they thought at all, and he's a disaster, right? So in one case, you've paid a draft pick compensation for a guy who's not going to pan out, or you've traded draft pick compensation for a guy that's going to cost you the same amount of money Kirk Cousins does in a year. And so I'm not sure I take that risk. Like, I would love to say yes. I'm not positive.
All right, I'm going to give you an NFL term, 2-minute warning, because we've got just under that left. But my last question is this. If you don't take whatever bucket load of money you can save from Kirk and throw it at Daniil, you don't have a pass rush next year.
Right. Any
hope that you can get Penix or Milton in a later round and you take an edge rusher with 11?
Yes, I think that actually, Brian, it's going to be I'm almost positive it's at 11, it's going to be an edge rusher, and if they trade back, it's going to be a defensive tackle, because I do think Penix is going to be their guy, or Spencer Rattler. If they decide Joe Milton's going to be the quarterback, it's going to be so much fun watching him throw footballs off the side of the stadium. He's a great kid with a great story. If you get a chance to read about Joe Milton, he might have the best arm that we've seen in the NFL forever. Man, that guy couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat.
You know what my fear with Joe Milton would be? Kellen Mond.
Oh, he's the exact
I know they're not. I know, opposite. But I'm talking about, hey, this guy, we know him from college. Oh, wait, he fizzled.
Right. He's like a really, really nice Jamarcus Russell. Like, none of the mental
you had to
problems,
go there.
But that's the kind of quarterback he is.
Right.
He's got the best arm in the draft, and it's not close. But that guy, you know how they throw footballs through tires? You better put one of those tires from the range dump trucks on it, because he's a little scattershot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is our Drawing Line segment, courtesy of Arola Architecture Studio, and that will do it for the Northland Sports Page Prime Time Edition. And I'll tell you this, right before we took to the air today for the Hermantown Championship game, I did get text messages from listeners saying, what time do you guys go on tonight, and will there be draft talk? Initially, I said no, because it's too early. We had a guest that wasn't available, and so, lo and behold, we closed the show with draft talk.
Yes.
Ask and you shall receive. On behalf of the Northland Sports Page, you're welcome. Thank you, CJ Osuchukwu. Thank you very much to John Carlson. Thank you, Dave Cook. Thank you to everybody who supported us during the hockey season. We got to go.
Thank you very much for supporting us, Brian. Nice job this week.
We did what we could. Congrats to the Hawks on a great season. We'll be back at our normal spot, 10 to noon next Saturday. Don't forget to spring forward. Good night.